Hi, Mel. Welcome. It's really lovely to see you here.
Hey, Catherine, thank you so much for having me on.
Now, what we do is we begin by putting you on the spot, although not at all. And I'd love to know, because I do know a little bit about you, but I would love you to introduce yourself and just say what's floating your boat right now and what is your passion with the work that you do, because it's really important work that's going on out there.
Yes, the world is certainly a changing. Um, yeah, so I'm basically I call myself soul relationship coach at the moment. It has changed a couple of times, but my tagline and I started my own podcast nearly 4 years ago now, actually, called the Never Settle podcast. Um, because I am passionate about people not settling in their life, settling in their relationship, settling in their career, because that was me quite a few years ago. And so I started this podcast really with the idea of producing content and knowing that I wanted to do something for myself in terms of my own business. And because I was working in corporate at the time, I worked in corporate sales over 20 years. And then in 2020, like a lot of people, I got made redundant. And it basically gave me the kick up the arse that I needed to go for it, in terms, because it's actually divinely orchestrated. 24 hours after finding out I was being made redundant, I'd already been invited onto this webinar, which was asking me to consider to be becoming a founding facilitator for something called Ultimate Contribution Uncovered. So the people that invited me, I knew anyway, and I've got a lot of respect for them, highly, highly like them, highly respect them. And for me, it was like, wow, okay, 24 hours. This is definitely a sign for me to actually, as I always say, put my big girl pants on and just go for it. And so the ultimate contribution pathway is all about people being able to discover their true core values, not from a list of 50 that a lot of people just do and say, oh, yeah, that sounds about right. That one sounds about right. There's a lot more to it than that. And it's all about somebody's unique life experiences. And then they're able to create a heart-centered, purpose-driven vision and mission for themselves and produce goals and next steps from all of that. So it's all basically coming from the heart and who they truly are. So the authenticity is 100%. So that sort of started me, and it gave me the comfort to do it because I was surrounded by other people doing the same thing. And then as a result of that, I've sort of evolved with my own coaching. And I was focusing just on women for a while. And more recently, I decided that the universe kept telling me I shouldn't be doing that. And so I started to focus on men as well. And actually, it's the men that seem to be very attracted to my message right now. And that message is basically going from feeling trapped and unfulfilled in your relationship to true love, passion, and purpose. Because quite frankly, that was me. I was lacking that passion. I was lacking that purpose in my marriage, in my career. And I know what a difference it makes when you basically start shedding the layers, Catherine, as I'm sure you're well aware of what that feels like, and start stepping into your authentic, true self, which for some people might sound a bit like new age, airy fairy, whatever, but it's not. It's like, if you're not showing up and being who you truly are, so many people are living the life that somebody else expects them to be living, or they think somebody else expects them to be living, like, and putting everybody's feelings before their own, their wife, their husband, their kids, their parents, or everybody's feelings get put above your own. And it just creates a very, very miserable, unhappy existence for a large part of it because, and maybe you don't realize it, but there is this discontent, there is this darkness in you that you can't quite put your finger on. And the other thing is fear. Fear keeps people stuck in those situations, fear about finances, fear about hurting people. All of this is very relevant and very valid, but ultimately it doesn't allow you to live the life that you were here to live. And that's what I'm passionate about.
It's lovely just to absorb all of that because it's so huge.
Yeah.
And the thing that struck me when I was listening to you was the scientists have discovered that the highest vibration that we can have is being authentic. And, we live in a world where there's an emphasis at the moment on sort of being positive and therefore not being negative. And actually, my work is around helping people to unravel their potential and unravel that passion, and getting on their sweet spot and living from your sweet spot. And living authentically is quite messy and chaotic. I don't know whether you agree. And it's sort of, you do have to go through layer upon layer upon layer. I mean, I was speaking to someone the other day and they said, I've utterly failed. I haven't grown at all. I haven't got anywhere. And I said, yes, you have. You really have. It's seasonal. And every time we're just about to do another shift forward, we sort of go backwards a bit.
Yeah.
So I love the work that you're doing. And I better come and do some work with you, please, immediately. I think the very funny thing about being a practitioner, I think if you're any good, you're constantly working with other people to make sure that you're, kind of on your game. But there are certain people that when they talk and when they say what they're really into, I kind of go, I'm sure I need that. I really want to work with you. So,
What, Catherine, like when we talked before this podcast, you explained a little bit about what you do, and I was asking about, who are you focusing on? Have you got a target audience and all the rest of it? And you made a joke of saying you're a marketer's nightmare because there is no real niche sort of thing, or, you don't want to be niched anyway. So, and then on your LinkedIn, it talks about chronic pain, but you're not just about pain. So and then you mentioned Chinese medicine before we got onto this call. So what is it? What is your ultimate outcome for somebody? Is there an ultimate outcome for somebody? If you were like, whether that person's in pain or whether they've got mental issues or whatever it might be.
I mean, it's a lovely question. I mean, the only reason why I'm a marketer's nightmare is because if you're an integrated Chinese medical practitioner, then to suddenly sort of give up the integration bit, this is what it felt like for me. It felt like I was being told to sort of almost get rid of the integrated and just become a hexpert in just one little tiny thing. And I just don't have the character for that, let alone the training. So ultimately, what I really do is I take people home. And, the reality of all of our homes on the outside is they are not consistently tidy. They're not consistently hoovered. They need spring cleaning. They need the duvets shifted. You've got to get your grandchildren's, your children's, or your husband's, or your lover's socks out of the bed, or you've dyed your clothes. There's chaos. But a really good family home just absorbs the chaos, and fundamentally there's love. And I think that most of what is happening in the world is taking us away from ourselves. So we're not at home. And when excuse the expression, but when the shit hits the fan, if we're not at home to sort it out, we don't actually gather the incredible, I mean, dare I say it, but the wealth. I mean, I'd love to give you an example, if that's okay with you. Can I give you an example? So my entire life, I've noticed when people have said, and I do it still to this day, it happened yesterday, there are so many people that believe that if you don't have your physical health, then you don't have a life. People say it out loud all the time. If you don't have your health, then you've got nothing. And I happen to be born with a medical matrix that was going to make it almost impossible for me to have the kind of health that most people take for granted. And yet I feel like I experience my life every single day. I'm weller than most people I ever come across, because I'm well in an integrated way. And what that means to me, I'm at home in myself. So my life is not perfect by any means. I don't have large sums of money in the bank. I'm not a millionaire. I'm not even a celebrity. I'm not, I'm not all sorts of stuff. But I'm not interested. What I am is someone that's comfortable in my own bones. I'm comfortable in the reality of my life. So it's very easy for me to bring people back home. I got a lovely review the other day, which was incredible. Someone said, I had no idea that it was possible for me to live while I was dying. And this person is dying. There's going to be no negotiating that. But while they're dying, they're living. And the truth is, we're all dying. Once we're alive, we're going towards the same area. We're going to die. But it's like, how are we actually living? And that's what my work is really about. So if you're bombarded with feeling overwhelmed mentally, physically, spiritually, I just happen to be trained in working out, well, okay, what's the next route? What's the next level? Okay, please, will you go and see Mel? You need to go and talk to Mel. And that's literally what I do. Sometimes I go, no, I'm the wrong person. You need to go and speak to Mel. Go, trust me, just go. That's what I do.
Mm. And if you are the right person, do you have lots of different modalities that you can rely on to help that person, whether it be NLP or, I don't know if you've mentioned Chinese a couple of times. I don't know whether you've done acupuncture and things like that. So what is it that you would actually give to somebody? And I know that that's going to be different for every person, but do you have like a sort of staple go-to, or is it just on a case-by-case basis?
I think, well, okay, so they're not for sale at the moment, but I've done 5 separate 31-day courses because I wanted people to have a taste of what this word integrated, which is not really in the marketplace, what does it look like? So I wanted people to have a journey that they could go on with me, where they spend 10 minutes or 15 minutes every single day concentrating on themselves, and they discover how to harness the seasonal energy, because the seasons are going on out there, but we have them going on inside us. And in the way that I was taught, there are 5 distinct seasons, not 4. And so you go on a voyage where you discover really more about yourself. So if someone's coming and working one-on-one, I generally start by saying, what are the things you would like to see really changed in 3 months' time? And they go, well, like what? And I go, well, anything. Just give me the biggest, most ludicrous dream in the world. So it could be physical, it could be, and then we literally break it down and we go towards those things. And if you say that you want to be a multi-billionaire or whatever, I will actually break down what would that take? Where are your belief systems? Why are you living as if you're not that already? So they're on now, because I've got 40 years of clinical experience, I've got a huge toolbox. But the thing that I think you all probably agree with is the biggest tool I have is I give a damn about the person that's right beside me, right in that moment. And sometimes when somebody, often in the clinic, people would say, will you stop me from smoking? And I go, no. And they go, why? There are masses for that. I go, yes, go to them. But I'm trained in such a way that I absolutely will not take away what is going on that makes you need to smoke at the moment. I'm not going to manipulate your system because there will be a kickback. That's not on my watch. And then immediately you get them curious about why they're smoking, and that it's probably please don't get me wrong about anyone that's listening to this. Sometimes smoking is a safer option than all the other things we could be doing in self-medicating. We need to get at why are we self-medicating? Because what I'm not interested in is quick fixes. It's more valuable to you or to whoever I work with if they understand what they're up to. Because then if it comes up again, and there are lots of cycles in our lives when we go, oh, I'm here again. Okay, what did I learn something with that funny, strange woman, Catherine? Oh, this is all I have to do. I don't have to be frightened of it. Don't have to immediately go into self-judgment. Something's going on. Okay, maybe I'm with a similar looking person or a similar sounding person because I've now got something for them. Maybe it's not about me not having learnt a lesson. You know, so there's more lightness. I hope I make life much more enjoyable for people, no matter what they're up against.
Yeah, you remind me, because I don't know whether I told you this when we originally spoke, but I had acupuncture for years, and that was another serendipitous meeting, the way all that came about. And she was newly qualified, or she was just about to qualify. And on our last session, she did this promo of 5 sessions. And on our last session, she said to me that she wasn't interested in treating symptoms. It was all about mind, body, and spirit. Because of my skin at the time, that's why I went to her. And she said, a lot of people will cut and run at this point, but if you want to continue these sessions, that's how we're going to roll, basically. And it took me a few seconds, and I said, yeah, I'm up for that. And that's when she told me I was deeply unhappy. And yeah, to say it felt like a sledgehammer had been cracked over my head is an understatement. I'd only been married a year at the time, and I'd convinced myself that I was content, and, you know, and all of these things that we tell ourselves. And that really was the start of the rest of my life, for sure. That was really, I mean, my spiritual journey started when I lost my dad in 2006. And then that meeting, or that particular conversation, was 2010, the back end of 2010. And I would say that was the start of the rest of my life. That was the start of me really taking this spiritual rising, if you like, and this taking myself on to be my authentic self. Because one of my top values is authenticity. And I just wasn't being authentic to anybody. And I wasn't being honest. That's another one of my values. So, yeah. So it just reminds me of what you were saying and the elements. And I did say to her, because I have a love of red wine, and I asked her to do the same thing for me that person asked you about smoking, and she wouldn't do it either.
I mean, if you think about it, the medicine people, and this is not about kind of giving people permission to do what they're going to do anyway, but the medicine people throughout the ages have used, I mean, food and substances can either be used as medicine or self-medicating. It can, almost anything in this world can be used dangerously. But it's our intention. And if we're still living with an educational system that teaches us that we have a mind as if it's kind of up there in a cupboard, and we have a body, and what we have to do in order to look after ourselves, we have to go to a gym. It's the word myopic. It's so small. Whereas actually, if you begin to introduce someone to the reality of being mind, body, and spirit, and your mind is in every single cell, then an incredible adventure begins. So no matter what comes at you, guess what? You've actually got it in you to really, really go for it in all sorts of different levels. And our educational system is not teaching that. The emphasis is what's wrong with you. You've got a challenge, you've got a problem, you've got an issue. You're a medical practitioner, Catherine, and you haven't cured yourself. You're still having surgery? Oh, I don't think I can trust you. You know, it's like we've got crazy belief systems and we're walking through the fog of illusions.
Yeah.
And then slowly, or maybe in that moment, the sledgehammer just cracks you wide open.
Yeah.
And the adventure begins.
For sure. I would say my next sledgehammer moment, well, it wasn't a sledgehammer, but it was definitely divinely orchestrated. And you know, when you just have those moments in life where it's like a slow motion opening up in front of you, and it's like a fork in the road, right? You've got two choices. And yeah, so the next one for me was 2 years later when I actually told my husband that I didn't love him anymore. And it took me 2 years to tell him. So it wasn't a quick road. It wasn't an easy road. And I held a lot of guilt, a lot of responsibility. I put us there. It's my fault. You know, I took the whole thing on, which is why it took 2 years. But I have to say, those sessions I had with my wonderful acupuncturist, it was more about the talking than the needles, let's be honest. And she was such an amazing reflector of where I was at. She called me out on my bullshit. She kept telling me that, you know, because there was this guy that I was still in love with from the age of 20, which had shadowed everything that ever came afterwards, including my poor ex-husband. And, you know, she said, he's not coming to save you, but he is a catalyst for you to realize that you're not happy and to get you out of this marriage. And I was like, nah, yeah, you're wrong, you know, and I was just adamant that eventually he was going to charge up on his big white horse. And actually he did at some point, but it didn't last very long. So yeah, so it's interesting because all of that wisdom and those reflections, and somebody like you, Catherine, that sat there listening and reflecting back and understanding and giving a different perspective and a very objective perspective, because you can't see the wood for the trees when you're in it, was priceless, absolutely priceless. She seriously undercharged me. I know that for a fact. But if it hadn't have been for her, I don't know how I would have got to where I got to in terms of making that decision, having the strength to make that decision. And then ultimately, you know, just having this amazing experience ever since, really, in terms of coming back to my home, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, my first book and the first company I had was, you know, deliberately breaking down. In fact, I've even taken the, whatever it's called, there's some legal term for it, but I think I legally own the word dis-ease. Because I think from my perspective, after this extraordinary training and then the experience of it in clinical practice is, you know, all of life is about spinning plates, really. We get the hang of maybe how the fridge works and the printer, you know, where that plate's all right. And then, you know, one relationship over here gets wobbly with a parent, or maybe someone's ill, you know, so you've got those two plates sort of just vaguely, and then something else and something else and something else happens. So we're, in other words, we're constantly going from feeling at ease to dis-ease. You know, it's a constant seasonal shift all the time. And if we're not okay with that level of constant change and shifting, then we're in resistance. Now, if we're energetically in resistance, what you resist persists.
Mm.
And you can't bargain with it. You can't buy yourself out of it. You actually begin to have to go with the laws of nature, and what you resist persists. And when we're lying to ourselves, you know, I mean, I was taught that there was nothing wrong with me medically. It was all psychiatric, and therefore I wasn't in physical pain. So I became such a brilliant bullshitter. Actually, I don't know whether I was brilliant, but I was brilliant. I was brilliant in that I honestly believe that if I did this anger workshop, or I went to this counselor or this coach, or I did this, or I did that, or, you know, at some point the magic was going to occur. I would no longer be in pain. Nobody ever sat down and said, Catherine, well, they did eventually. Somebody sat me down and said, Catherine, you are seriously, seriously ill. And it's not, you don't need psychiatric help. And I said, yeah, I do. I mean, just lock me up now, please. And he said, no. Your spine is crumbling. You need plates in your spine. We don't know how you're walking. So, I mean, and then they gave me permission in that one sentence to be in physical pain, which was a little bit strange, because it's like I had lied to myself and to the world for years. Yeah, fine. Man. I was in agony, absolute physical agony. And now, if somebody says to me, I mean, if you'd said to me at the beginning of the call, how are you doing? If I'd been in physical pain in front of everyone, I would have gone, it's a painful day. Finish. Do you know what I mean? I don't care what anybody thinks. And pain is my friend. I don't have to lie about it. And if I'm your best friend and you can't tell me that you're emotionally upset or there's something going on, then I'm a lousy friend. So if I can't tell the truth about how I really am, then I'm not being a good friend to myself, let alone to other people. And I conducted my entire life through lies to a certain extent, because the foundation that I was given was a lie. Catherine, you are not in physical pain. Okay, I'm not. Well, in that case, which was quite an intelligent, logical step to take, in that case, I'm a real lunatic. It must be my mind. I don't think it's politically correct to talk about lunatics, but anyway, I think I'm allowed to call myself.
Yeah.
I genuinely believed I needed to be locked up.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, the extent of the bullshit that we all tell ourselves on a day-to-day basis is just unbelievable, and I keep thinking about Joe Dispenza. Do you follow Joe Dispenza when you talk about your pain and your
No, I mean, I know exactly his work.
yeah. So obviously he healed his broken back and all of that, and he's never had a back problem since. I mean, hopefully that's all 100% true. But he's having some amazing experiences with people healing themselves in his workshops and stuff. And yet, the way you're describing it is like you were kind of doing the Joe Dispenza thing all those years ago by basically saying there is nothing wrong with me, or there's nothing, I'm not feeling this pain, and basically disregarding it. But actually, that was having such an even worse negative impact on you doing it that way, because you then believed you were psychotic or whatever, or a lunatic, as you called it. And it's just unbelievable what the human brain can create and the mind can create, in terms of us all living some version of a lie. Because we are all doing it at some level, and the relationship side for me, the people I talk to that haven't shared a bed for years, like 20 plus years, and all of this, and continue to put that other person's feelings before their own because they were brought up to believe that that's what you do, whether that's from a religious standpoint or just from strict parents or whatever. You have to put somebody else's feelings before your own. Otherwise, to not do that is selfish. And then we have a lot of unhappy people just bumbling around in this world that think that that's okay to keep putting somebody else's feelings before their own and living a lie that's not authentic for them. A bit like what you were doing, but in a completely different way. But ultimately, the bullshit that we're telling ourselves is not helpful.
And also, I think I'm not sure I'm going to be able to kind of do this, but there it's only now I can say this, and it might not be for everybody, but you know, if you truly begin to get to know yourself and what you're up to this lifetime, if you believe this is the only lifetime, I mean, I don't, but even if this is it, I have a really strong sense of what this lifetime for me is about, and actually being the concepts that are out there to do with it's not possible to have a life if you're not 100% healed, as if people know what that actually is, or that you can get rid of all pain, as if it's an imperative that we don't have pain. But there are all sorts of kind of illusions that I think I, in my little tiny small way, I'm here to be reassuring to other people, because there are people out there who try all their lives to be well, and yet on spiritually and emotionally they might be really well, but physically they're never going to. I mean, I'm alive thanks to a whole lot of metal scaffolding, and you know, it doesn't matter how healed I am, I have false implants in my body, which 100 years ago I wouldn't have had the privilege of having put in, and they need to keep on being changed. It's a whole performance. It's nothing to do with healing. It's nothing to do with psychology, but how I handle it is to do with my mind, my body, and my spirit. So I think that we, as human beings, I think we all go through processes where we begin to get to know what our individual truth is. And then I think we're set free. And I think the relationship that we have with ourselves actually sets us free to have relationships with other people that are much healthier. And learning to say no to someone because that's the right thing to do. So will you stop me from having red wine? No, I won't. I really shocked a patient one day because they said, will you stop me from, I know you're going to stop me from having coffee. And I said, no, I'm not actually. Put your coat back on, let's go and have a coffee. And they went, who are you? And I you know, I literally made this poor sit beside me, looking out at this very busy street. We're sitting outside, and we had the whole session drinking. I think we only had one cup of coffee, and we just talked about, because she'd come in telling me already what was kind of wrong in a way, and it just literally, she needed probably 6 less sessions with me by me turning everything around and going and having a cup of coffee with her out publicly. So I think we're all here to be different things. And I love the fact that I'm not trained in something that there's kind of a script for everybody. You know, part of the fun of being a practitioner is everybody requires something different, and it keeps me on my mettle. I'm constantly having to kind of go, well, okay, what is needed? And am I even the right person?
Yeah, that's interesting. It reminds me, so I've been doing this. I won this little program, which is only 6 weeks, with a wonderful woman called Sam, and it's all about intuition, enhancing your intuition. And you know, I'm fascinated with clairvoyance and mediums and all of that sort of thing. And of course, we are all psychic, we are all intuitive, but most of us are too busy to get it right. Most of us don't hear the little pearls of wisdom that come through because we're racing and chasing our tails. And anyway, so last Friday we did this whole thing, and it was reading. So I've got some oracle cards, and usually I'd be like, no, I'm getting nothing from the picture, and I'll just grab the book and I'll start reading the description. Where she was like, no, let's have some, 3 minutes just to connect in. And I was doing it for another girl on the call. And while I did that, while I actually gave myself that quiet time, and focus, these things started to come up. And so I started to talk about what was coming up for me. And I sort of only got halfway through and I could hear some commotion, not commotion, but like, oh, Mel, Mel. And so I looked up because it was on a Zoom call and the girl had left the call, apparently in floods of tears, because everything I said to her was 100% accurate and it was quite a traumatic, whatever's happened for her, and I don't know what it is. It's something to do with her love. It's been a very bad time for her, very, traumatic time for her. And so I was like gobsmacked that I was so accurate, in terms of my first proper attempt at connecting to the energy and connecting to the person. And where was I going with all of that? There was a reason why I brought this up. Oh, you were talking about integrated. So, and it was something that Sam was saying on the call. She was on about, it's always been like you're either a medium or you're a clairvoyant or whatever. And Sam is like very much a blend of lots of things. And I feel like that myself. I feel like a bit like what you were just saying. It's a blend, and there is no prescription, because prescriptions by their very nature are just horrific, because that doctor that's just prescribed you those tablets really doesn't know what's going on inside your body and mind. It's just, oh, okay, let's tick that box and give you that. Whereas when you take a different approach, and it, like, when it's that person, like you said, and you took her for a coffee, which completely threw her off what she was expecting, it shifted her state instantly. And like you said, then she needed like probably 6 less sessions with you just from that one simple act. And it's the same, in my coaching as well. Everyone is different, even though they're presenting similar things and similar questions and having similar experiences. How one person is dealing with that or thinking about that is totally different to how another person is. And it's being able to see that for what it is, and read that and be intuitive enough to say, okay, let's put the tools down here and let's just talk about this. And then whatever comes from that naturally comes from that naturally. So.
Yeah. And I think returning to one of the lovely things that you are so clear about is it's coming from your heart. I think that, I mean, I had a superb training, and I was very effective very quickly once I was qualified, but not even remotely as effective as I now understand that I am. And the difference is that I'm doing it completely from my heart. I'm much more capable of getting out of the way. I don't have to know the answers. So, having the privilege of being in front of someone and knowing that there's a kind of library in the universe, if you want, where all the answers are there, doesn't mean to say I have to know the answers, but actually it's so comforting that if I get out of the way on some level or another, if I'm the right person at that moment, something's going to come through. And the quicker I get out of the way and just an open vessel, what I call a grounded open vessel, then actually it gives room for the miraculous. It gives room for the whatever words a person is comfortable with, the angelic or the universal abundance or love. I think we're doing this the week of the Valentine's week, and the emphasis will be on the Valentine outside of us, but we have to learn to fall in love with ourselves. We wake up with ourselves and we go to sleep with ourselves. And yet a huge majority of people that I come across day in, day out, they're running as fast as they possibly can from themselves, as if they're with kind of whatever the devil is. And they're not, I mean, I used to have so many people come in that used to march into my clinic and they'd tell me before I'd even said hello, this is what's wrong with me. And I'm a bit of a shit. I'm a bastard. I'm, and they would just give me all what they imagine was their character defects. Then I go, okay, if we put aside your opinion of yourself, could you please tell me some symptoms that you've got? Just give me some physical symptoms. And they'd give me, they had gout or whatever the hell it was. Then I go, so now give me some emotionals. What do you mean emotions? What do you mean? Well, I go, well, I mean, do you feel constantly quite sad? And I'd be able to tell anyway. And I'd put my finger right on where they were stuck emotionally and they couldn't deny it. They just couldn't. And suddenly, this hurting human being that didn't have character defects, they were just hurting, would land like a puddle. And that's all of us, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, again, I'm going to swear. It's like today I've got my shit together. In half an hour's time or tomorrow, you might get a call from me and I might be going, Mel, I've fallen off the cliff again, but it's okay. If we as practitioners can't admit to being in that soup of humanity together, you know what I mean? We get it together and then we haven't got it together. The relationships are great around us, then they're awful. You know what I mean? It's all okay as long as we begin to get the hang of just being honest. Mel, I'm a mess today. We're not doing this.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. And as practitioners and as coaches, the imposter, like if you've created another thing that's happened in your life, which is you should have known better. That's what the inner voice is telling you. That's when you keep hiding again. And I was feeling like that last year, probably because I ended up in a relationship that in the end was really bad for me and really quite toxic. And it was with a man that I'd been friends with a long time. And so there was an element of trust and respect there and I couldn't see past that. I just thought, oh, and he'd had a traumatic childhood, and so I was making lots of excuses, etc., etc. But in all of that, I'm like, who the hell am I to be doing what I'm doing and talking about fucking relationships for fuck's sake? I've got it wrong again, sort of thing, and you do that self-talk, but going through that experience makes me even more capable now of being able to help people because, it was a very narcissistic person that I didn't even know what narcissism was. And I don't like labels and I don't like saying, oh, he's a narcissist, she's a narcissist, whatever. We're all on the spectrum. We've all got an element of that in us anyway. But I had no idea. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know what it was like to be manipulated by somebody like that. I didn't know what it was like to be gaslighted. And I now have experienced all of that. And so I can use that for other people with complete compassion, empathy, understanding, and reflection. So it's hugely powerful. But at the time, I was berating myself for how the hell did I get here, sort of thing.
Well, Mel, I don't know whether you'd agree with this, but I guess this is my take on all of this now. Tomorrow it might be different. But one of the key things about life, which again I think is not in our educational system, is if you're in the game of life and you're experiencing life as it really is, you're already winning. You're already successful. I think that what's happening now is this kind of concept, which I definitely lived with, of, that I was going to be somehow mature enough or spiritually enlightened enough or well enough or sane enough or whatever it was to be able to cherry pick just the creme de la creme of experiences, and that they will all be peaceful, all be good. And the more enlightened I was and the more peaceful I was, the more I could cherry pick. And if I didn't do that, then I'd utterly failed and therefore I was no use as a practitioner. Whereas now, what I think what's given me permission to just enjoy it so much, and I do live a lot of the time in joy and lightness, is that I see the bullshit that I used to live with, and I still can do, by the way. But I see it out there in a big, I call it the king with no clothes. You know, if I'm experiencing any kind of relationships, no matter what they're like, I'm actually winning because I've got the guts to experience life on life's terms rather than trying to control it, manipulate it. I go through periods where I seem to have a lot of dysfunction going on inside me, mentally, physically, spiritually, it doesn't really matter. I have many, many days when my life seems completely unmanageable. Equally, I can go through periods where I have people around me who equally seem completely dysfunctional. And it's all a bit of a muddle. But that's actually okay. That's not a reflection of me. And it's not a reflection of them. Life's pretty tricky at the moment. You put on the news, you don't get enlightened. You don't, I mean, you're bombarded with being told that, really the world is coming to an end, and there are more wars than have ever been, and there's more poverty, and there's more, you've just sat down with a cup of tea at the end of a very long day, and you're kind of going like this.
That's why nobody should watch the news, Catherine.
No, I agree. But you know what I mean? It is no wonder that if people are being doused with this stuff, they're doing really, really well to be able to get up and say good morning to you.
Oh God, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a whole other podcast in terms of rabbit holes I've been down the last 4 years, and realizing that everything we've been taught and told in this world is probably the complete opposite. And and our education and our health, certainly our government, are not fit for purpose. They're not equipping us with what we need to live a full and happy life. And yeah, poverty is probably higher now than it's ever been. And apparently we're supposed to be a civilized, educated society. So yeah, that's a whole other podcast.
But also, Mel, and maybe we'll end it with this, the privilege of being here now, for me anyway, is that I know that I live with huge pockets of poverty and huge pockets of an inability to lead myself, let alone other people. So I no longer have such I think there's so much that's not fit for purpose that's on the outside. So the only thing I can do is begin to be a little bit closer to fit for purpose within myself. Do you know what I mean? Because that's again back to the adventure and lightening the load of what's it going to take right now to love myself. And I often don't have to like it, don't have to like myself. But what does it take to love myself and love this other person right now in this moment? And take away my endless need for judgments. And being a practitioner, my goodness, that gives you permission to be fantastically judgmental. And now I've got better. I don't judge morally. I hope I don't. But I do assess all of the time. What can I do to serve? But to serve the oneness. So, Mel, I'm going to be sending people to you, and you're going to be a guest speaker for our membership when we open it up to anybody who'd love to hear you. So,
can I share one final thing before we finish?
Yeah, of course.
I did a Valentine's yoga workshop on Saturday. My wonderful yoga teacher, she's amazing. And so it was very centered on, healing, self-love and all that sort of thing. But of course, there was this Valentine theme through it. And at the end, she got us to write 2 cards. And she gave us these Valentine's cards. And one I wrote to myself, and one I wrote to a complete stranger. And she invited us to leave that card somewhere for somebody to find it. And I did that today. I did that when we were walking around the park, me and my son, and his girlfriend's here at the moment. So I left it on a bench and I took a picture. I have no idea who's picked that card up. But the idea is whoever needs to read that will find that card and will read it. And if we could show up like that on a daily basis, just with a smile or a kind word for somebody or a compliment or whatever it would be, how different the world would be.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, for me, Mel, that's the magic. So, you know, when the market people were trying to get me to, you know, sort of in 60 seconds go, what do you do? I was going, well, I don't know. I mean, I do know, but I don't know.
Yeah. I had to do that last week. 60 seconds or less.
It's just, you know, and it's sort of not, that's not what life is. That's what's so funny. And yet we're getting drawn into these pressure points, which actually don't do us any good, really. I mean, when on earth are we going to be in a lift with Richard Branson? And I can absolutely promise you, Mel, that if you were in a lift with Richard Branson, he would be really wanting to know how you were, and he wouldn't want, you know, he wouldn't want just 60 seconds with you. You know, that's not how these people work. I've met some of them, and they go on energy. They go on the smile in your face. And it's not kind of this bite-sized sort of horrible pressure. It's like, would you like a cup of tea?
Mm.
Lovely, lovely, lovely talking to you. Don't go anywhere while I just stop the recording. And anyone that is listening to Mel, there will be the links to her work. So, and there will be an opportunity to come and listen to her speak at our membership. So thank you very much, Mel.
Oh, thanks for inviting me, Catherine. It's been wonderful. I knew it would be. And just for your listeners, I said she sounds like Joanna Lumley. So you'll all be thinking about Joanna Lumley now.